Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryant Terry, and I am the chef in residence at MoAD, the Museum of the African Diaspora. Um, in 2015, Linda Harrison invited me to create this programming that centered on health, food, farming, all the issues that I care about deeply. And during Shelter in Place, we pivoted, and we've been doing these weekly, but they're going to be bi-weekly in 2021 because the weekly IG lives were exhausting, I have to say. But we will be doing every other week. We'll be having our Choppin It Up with MoAD, in which we'll be in conversation with everybody, scholars, journalists, food justice activists, people who are doing the good work. So this week, I'm very excited to have my colleague, someone who I greatly admire, Osayi Endolyn, in conversation. And so I will be reading her bio, and then I'll invite Osayi to come in. So Osayi Endolyn is a James Beard winning writer with work in Time, The Washington Post, the LA Times, The Wall Street Journal, Eater, Food and Wine, Sea and Travel, and the Oxford American. Her essays for the collections You and I Eat the Same and Women on Food are widely celebrated. She appears in Chef's Table and Ugly Delicious on Netflix and has been featured on NPR's 1A, The Splendid Table, and the Sporkful podcast, for which she won a 2020 Weebie, one of those. In 2019, Osayi was awarded the UC Berkeley 11th Hour Food and Farming Journalism Fellowship. That same year, Eater invited her to guest edit the inaugural Eater Young Gun section with stories focused on newcomers to the industry. And in 2018, Southern Living named her one of the 30 women moving Southern food forward. She serves on the board of trustees for the Edna Lewis Foundation. And she's just brilliant in so many ways, working on a lot of projects that you probably know about and many more that you don't know about. I'd like to say thank you to Kaiser for underwriting my program for the past 5 years and continuing to see this vision that we have of using the museum as a platform to educate people beyond fine art, really seeing it as an opportunity to help base build and grow this movement for creating a more healthful, just, and sustainable food system, as well as just helping people live better lives. So with that being said, I'm going to invite Osayi in.
Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Hello. That was amazing. I've never heard Weeby. I love it. I think that should be the new name, Weeby.
I
I
I
got a
just
Weeby.
I like that name so much. This is Southern rapper Weeby, and I always think about just how nice that sounds coming out of my mouth, Weeby, but Webby.
It's yeah, it's very black. I love it. It's great to see you. Thank you for
Great to see
that.
you. Yeah, it's
Quick, can I just say a quick side note about your sponsor, Kaiser? So growing up in California, like Kaiser was like my childhood insurance. So, or like that's how where I always went to the doctor. And I still remember my pediatrician is this Egyptian woman, Dr. Tanios. And so like my whole like experience with Kaiser is like basically like my whole like up to 18.
word. Look,
Cool.
I not only am I a fan for the work that they've supported, but we had both of our children at their in Walnut Creek. They actually have a birthing center so that women don't
Wow.
actually have to be in such a kind of medical, hyper medical environment. You get your own birthing suite and all that. So
Wow.
big up to Kaiser, y'all leading it. And can we not? I mean, we have to talk about Preston Maring, the physician who
Mm.
started the whole, farmers markets at hospitals. That whole trend was started
Wow.
in
I did
Oakland
not
at
know
Kaiser.
that.
So Kaiser's always ahead of the game.
Oakland just, can we just do a round of applause for Oakland? Because
Yes,
just
we can.
on
Yes.
all levels, all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
So I haven't spoken to you since last year when I got the book deal for Black Food. And I probably spent, we spent, it was funny because I just felt like I could talk to you for hours. You know, I was like, I'm gonna come in and give you the pitch, but it was just so nice finally like connecting with you and
Same.
getting to know you. And I see this conversation as an extension of that because honestly, I was looking over the questions that I had prepared last year before we had to postpone our conversation.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I don't even want to talk about this stuff. Like, to be honest with you, I'm pissed. I'm so pissed. And I'm
Yeah.
like, for my
Yeah.
own radical self care, I just got to keep it light because if I go down there, I'm just gonna, I don't know what I'm
We
gonna
can
do,
keep
but
it we can keep it so light. Listen, I know it's only 3 o'clock in Cali, but I have a cocktail here in Brooklyn.
damn.
I'm
See,
drinking.
I mean,
I made a Martinez for myself. And have an honorary one here for you because I thought maybe you'd be a little. I mean, I still have plenty of work ahead of me this evening, but that's not stopping me.
well, thank you for pouring me a drink. I actually, one of the things I try to give up something every year just to
Oh, you
keep
dry?
myself honest. So I'm giving up alcohol
Oh,
for
good.
2021, but
The
maybe
year? Wait. The whole year you said? Not just January?
the whole year. But
Okay. All
with
right.
one exception, I have a
Solidarity.
bottle of Dom Perignon. Well, the bottle's in the house cooling, but I have the box in which the Dom P came, and
Okay.
it's like I look at it at my standing desk every day, and so I have a goal that I wanted to accomplish for this year. So if when I accomplish that goal, I'm gonna break open that bubbly, but that's it.
Okay. Listen, I'm in support. We got to do whatever we need to do to stay true. I was just saying this to your previous guest, our friend Hawa Hassan, author of In Bibi's Kitchen. She called me yesterday and we were having a conversation. She had FaceTimed me and I was like laid out on my couch. And she's like, well, how's your day going? Let's start there. And I was like, yeah, but we were talking about, how kind of we were just nurturing ourselves at this moment. And we were speaking about someone that we both knew. She knows them much better than I do. And this person is living a life right now where they're in a little bit of a messy place. And I was commenting like, man, 2020 did not teach us how, like, at least to identify what we really want and to have the courage and conviction to make steps toward living that life if you hadn't already.
Yes,
I don't know what's going to get you over. Like if
seriously.
2020 didn't like click it for you, and so that was just another level of us, like that again, like that. How do you stay honest to yourself, like admitting who you really are, what's not working, what you really
Yes,
want, and I
yeah,
think a lot of people right now, like just very confronted with ideas of what they feel like they deserve, and
hmm
it's been very fascinating to watch that. So yeah, I think yeah. But in terms of lightness, I'm here for the levity. All I do is all day long I just bump like R&B slow jams because they make me happy.
Word. Well, I will say I've given up the alcohol, but the thing that's gotten me through 2020, and I'm sure will continue to help me. This, this is CBD. Okay, this is CBD for if my mother-in-law's watching. This is CBD, but we all have the things that we need to
And
get
I
us over.
I second that
Um,
emotion. Yeah.
so yeah, it was something you said earlier that triggered something I wanted to ask you. You're talking about, oh, look, yes, I'm all about, I mean, for real, like 2020, my priority is my like happiness, joy, peace. Like I have an alarm on my phone and it goes off twice per day. I have actually like alarms for several hours in a day and I put these mantras, these kind of
Mm,
affirmations. So when I read it, I have to read the affirmation. So I'm constantly speaking and reading into existence what I want to manifest. And
mm,
one of those just being a fun, easy loving dad and husband. And that like in that way, I just so many of the things I used to stress about, whether it was parenting, being anxious about kids,
yeah.
I'm just chill now. And I have to be that way because
Yeah.
I feel like psychically 2020 just did such a number on me and I just have to like overcorrect in the other way. And that's the only thing that's gonna help me survive this year. So that's where I'm at with things.
joy and ease. I've been looking to create that for myself as well. And it's so interesting, like the levels to which people will, kind of, well, the universe maybe, like just kind of challenge, like, are you sure you want that life? Because maintaining a life of joy and ease actually requires quite a bit of rigor. And it doesn't mean that you're just like canceling people who may bring difficulty, or it doesn't mean that you're not having complex conversations or having to confront things. But like my shit has to be like clear and solid to allow for the spontaneity that like easiness
Yes.
and joyfulness, can
Yes.
bring about. And when I see stuff that's not that coming, I recognize like, okay, like you have a responsibility now to affirm or negate that energy, because it's not even about that person. It's about
Yeah.
what you're communicating energetically that you want more of.
Yes.
And it has had me really in check because, I mean, even like in some encounters where, you know, um, folks in my life who I may, be very kind of like lighthearted and very kind of just sort of social with, it's like, okay, like I don't want to talk about your bad day. Like those are conversations you have with other people here.
Yeah.
Like there are people I
Totally.
can have those conversations with, but like this is a you know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
it's and sometimes people will get upset because they think that yeah, like maybe they have a right to, or like it's just natural, like you're coming over and you like, you're in my bubble and you just start bleh, and I'm like,
Mm-mm, 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 mm-mm.
you clear that before you get in the elevator, because I cleared my
Yes.
shit before you got here. So,
Right. Take
whatever you
that.
gotta do,
Leave
you need to
that
pull a leaf
outside the
right here.
door. Then
What
you
do you
can
need to
come
do?
into sacred space.
you know like,
Yeah.
and I think some of us, we're not aware how we just throw our energy around. I mean, I even said that in a conference call, or right before a conference call started. I told the host, I said, I'm not making small talk about this week's events. If that happens, I will log out and I will come back in when the actual agenda of this meeting commences, because they had started the conversation in the previous meeting like that.
Mm-mm,
And I'm like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to drag me,
mm-mm.
especially when you're talking about things that had nothing to do with that. Like our work was not impacted by these events.
Right.
So I was like, mm-mm. And she got it. She was like, I'm clear. Like
Good.
I will log out from the WebEx.
Boundaries.
Like you're not doing that. Like I
Mm-mm.
am not, yeah, I'm not taking that. So, and it's also a reminder for her too. Like you have permission to just start the meeting.
Yeah,
You ain't
exactly.
got to like roll through all this like, stuff. Just start the meeting.
Yeah,
Do the thing that's in the subject line.
I know. Like we don't need anything perfunctory. Let's get deep. But yeah, like boundaries, so important. I've been really working on the boundaries, and I've just been working on being unafraid of reinvention. Um I'm gonna say this because I'm trying to destigmatize, and I think we need to like normalize talking about marital problems, but
Mm,
we've been having a lot of tension, my wife
yeah.
and me. And the thing is, when I talk to other people, I realize that most people who are booed up, partnered up, married have been having a lot of tension during this period, especially, folks who are being forced to stay in, their homes, not
Yeah.
being able to have the same, the outlets of the kind of networks that allow us to connect with other people. And it's like
Yeah.
you start to depend on each other for so much. And it can be overwhelming. And so, anyway, I'm saying that to say that, you know, I'm in a period where I feel like I've been forced to reinvent the way that I'm moving through the world in so many areas. And it was scary initially, but I'm so excited. There's still like some fear, but I'm excited about just stepping into this next phase of my life, stepping into,
Mm.
um, what my highest self needs, and not just kind of being in this momentum of 10, 12 years ago that, we often, just the way in which we can allow that momentum just to continue the same patterns, get
Just absorb
comfortable.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
love that you said that, because you have such a beautiful, perfect looking family. And it's so it's I mean, I think you're right. Like, I mean, I often felt, so I became single earlier this year. Um And, you know, the last couple of years was a real like process for me because it wasn't like a sudden, you know, these things never are sudden, right? Like it's always like stuff. And, you know, that wasn't the intent, but that's the way it worked out. And, very good place about it. But I I found it very difficult to figure out how, you know, especially, you know, as a writer, God, like you're just porous, right? Like everything is just sort of coming through. Like, let me just say first, like my work that most people are kind of familiar with me with is in food, but you know, I kind of came to the world of writing through personal essays, and when you're doing that, you're not supposed to really kind of censor yourself, at least in the beginning, right? Like maybe what you put out there eventually is, you know, respectful of boundaries and other people who are not choosing to talk about their life publicly. But, and I think I've done a good job of that in the subject matter that I've covered. But, you know, in the beginning, it could just feel like everything is up for grabs, like, you know, it could be on paper. And so as someone who's always processing things through language, it was very instinctual. And I'm also a very verbal person to want to talk to people who care about me and I care about like what I was experiencing and what I was going through. And sometimes you're just like, is this too much information? Like, you know, because people don't talk about that stuff, or there's just a lot of secrecy. And then people will find out that friends of theirs are having trouble, or that someone's moved out, or they split up, and people will be like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, how the fuck would you know? Like every time she tried to talk to you about it, you got upset, you got worried because it made you think about what was going on in your relationship, so you didn't want to talk about it. You know, there's all these like things, right? And so like, you know, I think that you know, yeah, how we kind of move through these transitions and spaces in our intimate relationships can be useful to be more engaged with that, you know, maybe not publicly per se, but at least in our communities, because as you said, like everyone we know is navigating something, and it's very humanizing. And I think even in terms of how we think about partnership and relationship is changing. I mean, I personally recognized, you know, I do have some big single energy happening right now, I will have to say. And, you know, I've noticed that my experience of heterosexual men is that they don't have anyone to talk to. They're not talking to themselves. They're not talking among themselves, I should say.
But no, let's be clear.
Well,
a lot of folks aren't talking to themselves, and they need to be talking to themselves, their higher selves, and talking to a therapist upon which they can hear their internal dialogue or whatever. But yeah, anyway, I get it.
Yes, I love that. But like, I would notice, because like I have these, like I have a very defined boundary of like how I'm navigating these relationships right now. And what I recognized, and I was like, oh, like I'm not the girlfriend, I'm not your mom. Like, I don't want to hear about your business. I don't want to hear about your book. I don't care. You're a lovely person. I'm sure you're doing a lot of wonderful things. That's not what we're doing, right? Like, and I would talk to. I have a lot of platonic male friends. I'm very thankful for those relationships, and I'm very transparent in those relationships. And they are cracking up because they're just like, this is monumentally historic for a lot of these, you know, experience for these men that you're talking to, because they're not accustomed to someone who doesn't really need them. Like, you're not trying to watch Netflix. You're not worried about a biological clock. You're not trying to date. You don't care what they make. Like, these are things that like you don't need. And so some of them are finding themselves really kind of overwhelmed by their uselessness in a way, maybe self-perceived. And I have found that like the things that I don't want to do, they really want to do. And I'm like, I have other relationships where I can process crazy shit in my industry, process stuff in my day, deal with my health, my energy, all this stuff. Why don't you have that? Like, you're looking for your girlfriend, person, whatever, to do that, all that stuff. So I was talking to my dude friends, like, are y'all talking to each other about this stuff? And like, they're like, no, we don't talk about this stuff. And I'm like, really, I mean, this might become a point of some of my writing this year, because I think this is important. I think there are people who are being introspective in this way, like I've noticed Jadena, the vocalist and rapper who I love. He has also like very good
So
Instagram.
dope. He's so dope.
He's so great. He's so great. He had this recent Instagram post where he's like walking through this field and it's Isaac Hayes' Walk On By playing in the background. And if you know the lyrics to that song, which has been, performed by many artists, the lyrics are like, if you see me, walking in the street
Walking
and you
in the streets,
just walk on by, right?
to
This
cry.
beautiful like love song. It's so sad. And I was like, dude, ain't nobody walking by you and not not trying to do something. I mean, like with Jadena, I'm not interested in him in that way, but like I'm fascinated by, he like leads a book club conversation. He's like having all these, YouTube. And so I think there are a lot of people who are doing that kind of work on themselves, but I'm finding it really challenging to observe that in most of the guys that I encounter. And I'm concerned because I know we said we are going to keep it light, but it's that kind of lack of clarity and communication and sensitivity that is kind of creating the world that we have right now. It's like, it's all the like misogynist, anti-queer, anti-trans, like all this stuff that people are, straight men tend to be like fighting against, also like the sort of like forced domesticity that is happening to a lot of these men who cannot work outside the home now. And they're stuck in these cyclical routines that were mostly attributed to women's work and hidden.
Right.
And it's like they don't see any production. It's very, men are very like production oriented usually. And I think it's been very challenging for a lot of them. And so that's just been my like, so I'm not navigating like relationship tension in the way of like you might be, but it is really interesting to think about this sort of systemic gender role that has been capsized, and it's kind of fucking up my sex life, frankly.
Okay, well, look, I mean, we can circle back to that. I do want to say this because I just feel like the one thing that has been very clear is that the type of informal interactions and connections in which and look, I'm very clear that I my friends, the people, the men that I surround myself with are trying to do the work.
Yeah.
Some to a further extent than others, but I'm trying to surround myself with people who are pushing me to do the work. And so just the simple like connecting and like over a beer, playing tennis, whatever, and just like being able to like download, talk about what's happening in the home. So you're like, oh, like everybody has stuff going on. I feel like that missing piece has made it hard for a lot of men, and it needs to be engineered. Like a group of friends and we actually said we need to engineer the circumstances where we can actually connect and download and communicate in ways that we organically usually do when there's a sense of normality in the world and we can meet up for a beer and hang out. And I feel like that's been so helpful. Like some of my email threads that I'm on, it's just like they've been a lifesaver, for 2021. And, it's exciting. I hope it's becoming a zeitgeist. But just hearing a lot of men who are really trying to do the work, who are really looking at their internal misogyny and sexism and homophobia and recognizing that that's a practice that we need to be doing every day in terms of dismantling that within ourselves, so that, as my friend Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us, that we can, see that change manifest in the world. It has to start internally. So anyway, how the hell did we start getting this deep when I said I wanted to just have a light conversation?
I know. It's inevitable. It's always a symposium. Me and my girlfriends from UCLA who, we used to travel together in the before times, and like we'd like go on these vacations and someone identified this. They were like, so basically you always have like symposium vibes on these vacations, like everybody's like like just laid out by the pool, but like having like hella debates and I don't know, it's just when your mind thinks a particular way, it's here's what I'm interested in. Like, so with access to touch gone for so many people, or limited for most people, do you find that, so I mean, you have you live with a partner in your home, but like, do you find that that's a point of expressed concern in the in the in the communities that you're in, with other men? I have My theory is that a lot of straight men are not being touched right now, because even a DAP, right? Like, I saw this
Mhm.
beautiful piece by Damon Young in the New York Times, an op-ed about the absence of the DAP, and that he missed this like interaction. It was really beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I need to peep
Um,
that.
yeah, and you know, but like even that, like there aren't really, to my observation, and I say this as someone who grew up with brothers, always have had a lot of guy friends, and also like sometimes was in social situations where I was around a lot of guys. Like in high school, I did the stats for the varsity football team, so I was like in the locker room and all that stuff. So like I my assumption, my theory is that there's not really any touch for these dudes,
It's
really.
true. I mean, as you know, there are the accepted forms of men being intimate with each other,
Yeah,
and oftentimes that plays out in sports. Um, I don't know if it plays out
right.
anywhere else, but
I
but
mean, I
yeah,
think it's mostly sports, which you can't really do right now. I
yeah.
think it's sports, and it's like that greeting, that cultural
Hmm.
greeting. And without that, where's that expression going?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, simply because I'm just at an age where most of my friends are booed up, mostly married.
Yeah. Yeah.
That might be changing this year, but I'm telling you, like, so many of my friends,
Condé.
like, man, we're going through it, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yes, I get it. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna lighten this up. We're gonna lighten this up. All right, so
People are hanging with us. I think this is like someone, Marcus has the tea. My friend Marcus. Hey, Molly. Yeah. Yeah.
so I want to talk about a city that's dear to both of us. A
Okay.
city that has probably one of the most fascinating and delicious food cultures in the world, and that's New Orleans. I know that's a city that you love and adore.
How do you know this? Do you know this? I guess I've written about it a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I
I
love New
mean, I
Orleans.
know everything about New Orleans. I don't know if you know. I went to college in New Orleans. I went to Xavier, so that like
Xavier.
that city
Okay.
is. I mean, I've had the privilege of living in so many awesome cities, from Brooklyn to the Bay, to Memphis, but New Orleans,
New
that's
Orleans.
my
I
heart and
was
soul.
just thinking about New Orleans. I've been thinking about New Orleans a lot, actually. So many people I love are in New Orleans. But I was also thinking about, I have a lot of solo dance parties here at, Casa Osayi.
Where do
And
you live?
I live in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, which some people will say that's Flatbush, baby.
I'm
They're
like, when
like,
I was living, look, I lived on St. James in Fulton for like a decade.
oh, okay,
And when I got there, it was Bed-Stuy. When I
yeah,
left, it was Clinton Hill.
yeah. I told Miss Colleen from James Beard Foundation that I lived in Prospect Laffert's Gardens, and she said, "Baby, that's Flatbush."
Yes.
And I said, "Got it." So depending on who I'm talking to, I just say both. But I'm right by Prospect Park on the east side,
Hmm.
and I love where I live. And but like, wait, where was I going with that?
You
Oh,
talking about New
because
Orleans,
I was
baby?
talking about New Orleans. So like, yeah, like New Orleans. Okay, undefeated. Like, okay, so with my friends, I was telling you like
Wait, wait.
our
But first of all,
symposium.
can you tell me about your first time in New Orleans and what drew you there?
Oh, oh, wow. I feel like, whew, I just
I'm
stepped
just
into
interested,
therapy.
like, were you
I know,
younger?
but
Was
it's,
this as an
yeah.
adult?
So New Orleans, I went in college. It was my last year of college. I was at UCLA. I was not, at a HBCU. Life decisions. And I went for the New Orleans Jazz Heritage Festival, in fact. And my good friend Aaron Stamos, who I'd met on the jazz festival circuit in California.
Hmm.
That time was like, I think she was like working on like script writing and things like that. A wonderful creative person who now lives in Hawaii and has done a lot of really great things in her writing life and creative life. She's a person who makes things. Anyway, I don't remember the plan exactly, but I remember like I got there. This is where I got my first tattoo in New Orleans on Royal Street.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, but
I
was it a drunk tattoo? That's what I
No,
want
it
to
was not a drunk tattoo, but I think I
Okay.
need to get it removed because I think it's like a little, at this point in my life, I recognize the cultural approach. It's a Japanese symbol on the back of my neck. It's beautiful. It's fine, but like I don't read, script in Japanese, and maybe
Yeah.
I shouldn't have it, right? Like
I
I don't
look,
know. I just,
I
you know,
get it. I've had this tattoo on my left arm that I got when I was starting to practice yoga in
mm,
college. And
Sanskrit.
yeah, it's in Sanskrit. And I'm just like, it means a lot. It has a deep meaning, but I'm still getting it. I'm covering it up. And I did.
Yeah, I think I need to do something with it. I'll do it when we can get out again. I stayed at a hotel that actually got robbed while I was there.
Wow.
So New Orleans, actually.
That's some New Orleans shit for real.
Like I heard the front desk person being like dragged down the hallway because the person was trying to get them to open the safe. And I didn't know if they were going like door to door or what was going on. I was terrified. Um, uh, it was a beautiful, like superhuman trip. I loved it. And that was my first time. And I remember Aaron, so my friend Aaron let me, this is a good friend. This is also a good white friend. she I was too young to rent a car, right? You got to be like 25 or 26 to rent a car. And um, she let me borrow her rented car to drive out from New Orleans to Lake Charles,
Mm,
where my great aunt lived at the time.
mm.
Auntie Babe, we call her.
What?
She was my grandfather's baby sister.
Wait, because
And
you
you
have people from Mississippi and Louisiana, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So, and I had been the first person in my, like, sort of like between my mom, my aunt, to come out that way for a long time, right?
Mm.
And so she was just overjoyed. She couldn't believe, like, California, great niece coming out to kick it and just hang out. And so, yeah, it was great. That was my first. That was my first New Orleans trip. My last New Orleans trip was
Wait,
in
but can I
February.
ask you a question? Is your great aunt, is she like steeped in like Louisiana Creole cooking? Does she get down like that?
I actually said something to her about Leah Chase, and she didn't know who she was.
What did she cook for you?
Did she cook for me? Yeah, she cooked for me when I was there. I don't remember what she made at the time, but yeah, Babe is like, yeah. I mean, I guess there are a lot of, we want to think about so much of our culture being like connected to food, and I think in many ways it is, and she certainly is aware and appreciative, but that that has not been a major like component of her life, especially since
Mhm.
I've known her, as like, she's been elderly, for a significant part of my like adult life, right? So she ain't trying to do that.
Yeah,
she's,
yeah.
she's living in places where people are cooking for her, but she'll talk about the seasoning, which is funny to me.
Mm.
you know she's funny. Babe is like, you know not, so I think she turned 90 last year,
Mm.
and I called her
I
and
love
I
those
wished
old
her.
school black terms of endearment. We had an auntie, we called her Sweetie.
I didn't know Babe was not her name. I mean, I was grown. Like, someone said blah 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 blah, Luella, and I said, who is that? They were like, Babe. I was like, what? Same with her son, Mike's second cousin.
But
It's like
that only makes
it's
sense that you would make that assumption. I feel like I heard you talk about because your dad's name is Lucky, right?
yes, but Nigerians are different. Nigerians were like, fortune, patience,
Yeah.
charity, lucky. So people would always think that was his like gentrified white people name. And I'm like, no, you'll hear all this Edo, and then it's like lucky, good luck, whatever, like the person. So yeah, it's different. But she like, I called her to wish her happy birthday, and she was like, I got all these flowers. I got flowers over here. I got flowers over there. I hope I'm not finna die.
That's hella funny.
But like
It's like,
that's the
y'all
humor,
know
right?
something I don't know.
It's like she's appreciative, but like she can't show it too much. You know, it's like a very interesting and like, you know, the sort of like suave, you know, accent that she has. But yeah, that was my first kind of Louisiana experience. I had this great, so what, to bring it back to the solo dance party, the reason I was thinking about New Orleans and my friends and our trip that we made like maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago together was like New Orleans is undefeated. So one of my favorite claims to fame in my friend groups is like, I could be anywhere and I will find a dance partner. It's like,
That's your
you
thing.
know,
Okay. All
and
right.
it's like just on the dance floor, it's amazing, it's great, and that's it.
And then it's done. Yeah.
Who they are, there's no mac, there's nothing like that. Even when I've been partnered, it's like, look, you don't dance, I'm dancing. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Like, you know, like so I remember this. I had twice this trip. We went in this fall. I had twice on this trip, like the random dance encounter where it was just magical. I mean, like, you know, like a lot, like multiple songs and it's vibe. And then you're just like hugging and it's great. And New Orleans is undefeated for the random, you know, amazing dance encounter. So I love New Orleans. And that probably wasn't where you were going with your question about New Orleans, but
No,
that,
no
yeah.
doubt though. It's funny because I remember I had made like this wasn't the only factor. My parents actually spent a lot of times in New Orleans when I was growing up, even though we were from Memphis. So I was familiar. And it was always the forbidden, city. It's like, we want to go to New Orleans. And New Orleans is for grown folks because they
Yeah.
were going to kick it and party on Bourbon Street or whatever. Point being is when I saw Boomerang, the film, Boomerang, the most compelling scene in that whole film for me, I don't know if you remember this. You
I
saw
love
Boomerang back in
Boomerang.
there, right?
Oh my God. Boomerang is saved on my DVR permanently.
Oh Jesus, you're not playing. But you
What scene
remember
would
the
you like to touch?
scene when Eddie Murphy and I think it was Robin Givens maybe, but they were in a little juke joint or something in New Orleans, and they were just like dancing and like getting it in as folks do in New Orleans,
In New
and
Orleans.
that was just so dope. And then when I got there, it was just beautiful seeing just how rich and
Yeah.
just the dance culture there. Have you witnessed Black dance culture there? Like I don't know if that's still. I don't know, but when we were in college, there were a series of songs that everybody knew, like not songs, dances. So it would be like a mix where it might be like a dozen or so dances, and it would just. I was blown away when I first moved there because I'd be looking at this club, whatever, outside on campus and seeing hundreds of people doing the same dance in unison. Like, did y'all coordinate this? How did this happen? And I was just so like amazed at just like the
There's an
range of people.
energy there.
Yeah.
There's an energy there like that's nothing else. And I really do think there's a lot of ancestral imagery there. I mean, obviously, I mean, you know, for people who don't know, there's some craziness going on in the comments, which I think is so sad. I made a comment about my good white friend. You know, that speaks to the privilege that she had that she extended to me. So I don't understand why you don't understand that. But, you know,
I'm
excuse
I'm
yourself.
I'm
We're
trying to
just going to
ignore
carry on.
that. I'm trying to ignore that and do my job over here. So
I know, but I'm just like, is that confusing to people? Like, I don't know. Carry on. Anyway, my my sense of New Orleans is just such a deeply rich. I mean, I feel it. I don't know if you feel it like this in cities like Charleston,
mm,
Savannah, but like it just makes me feel very locked in. And I actually, when I left New Orleans that first time, I think it was 2004. I came back with some ghosts. Like I literally had to like I was living in Sherman Oaks at the time and I had to like light a bunch of white candles, open the windows, like have some communication cuz I just, you know, sometimes you just got to let people know like all right, what can I help you? Like what do you need? You're free.
mm,
But I
mm,
learned a lot about
yeah.
spirituality on that trip because you know, there were so many of our ancestors brought through that port. And, you know, obviously there's so much history there that I'm still learning about. But, you know, there were many different classes of Black experiences throughout that city, throughout that state, really, where
And
people could gather and
mhm.
commune. And I mean, it's you know, it's how we got jazz. It's how you know so many things that we just take for granted now. It emerged from this place where displaced, traumatized, lost people, desperate, were
Hmm.
finding each other and figuring out how to make a life for themselves and
Yeah.
for their children, the best, and their adopted children and their adopted chosen families as best as they could, oftentimes with so little autonomy.
Yeah.
And, you know, to think about, again, the global nature of this forced migration, you have so much coming up from the Caribbean through freed people, through like rumors and stories of people who had been marooned and finding their own ways to find their communities. So like it's just an incredible like
Hmm.
mix of cultures. And you know, one of the things that I've learned in the past couple of years is how ubiquitous Caribbean migration has been since the beginning. We tend to
Yeah.
think about it as being sort of a more recent immigration conversation. It's as long as people were in this portion of the world, there's been this cyclical movement, and we don't talk about that part. We talk
Oh
about
yeah.
the Atlantic part, but we don't talk about the Caribbean to the mainland, you know, of the what's now United States. So
We used to
I,
call we
yeah,
called New Orleans, like my little crew, we called it Upper Caribbean. I mean, as
yeah,
you know, the culture, the energy, it
yeah,
feels much more Caribbean than it does United States, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
actually
okay.
went there with Ralston Williams, a chef here in New York who is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And he had never been there before. And I, you know, it's so cool to experience a place like that with someone for the first time. And
Hmm.
he was like, this feels like home. Like he couldn't
Hmm.
believe a place like this existed in the United States. He, you know, he was raised on the island and came to Brooklyn. He was like, I think 9.
Hmm.
Um, and had never been to New Orleans, and he could not believe it.
Hmm.
Like not just the architecture, not just about the language, everything,
Yeah.
everything. And so I
Hmm.
think you know there's still so much to be resourced from you know those connections. You
Yeah,
know, in terms of food writing and you know, I mean, so many other expressions as well.
for sure.
Yeah,
Um, it's a lot going on there. It's some deep, it's a lot of spirits. It's a lot of spirits. It's a lot of dark energy. I mean, and how can it, you think about the bloody nature of like, you know, French colonization, Spanish colonization, like everybody fighting on over this region, and you got to protect yourself. That's one
yeah,
thing that I was told soon after getting there, and I came to discover, you know, experientially that if you don't protect yourself, you might get caught up with some energies that you don't want to be a part of. So, what's your? Tell me some of your favorites. I know you like Willa Jean. I know that's one of your favorite spots to hit up.
sure. Yeah, I love
But
Philly Fields. Yeah.
what are some other spots you like to go to eat?
Well, I was introduced to Her Dat Kitchen by my friend and brother Tunde Way,
Oh yeah, that's the
and
little spot. Just where? What ward is that in? I know what you're talking about for sure.
you know what? I could not tell you. I
It
would
is
have to
where
look
it
it
is.
up because that night it was dark and rainy, and I just was like following the path I was given. Um,
Shout out to Tunde.
Shout out to Tunde. Shout out to Her Dat. You know, they do a lot of kind of like blackened seafood, you know, like really like rich cream sauces. You know, it's
Mhm.
there's a decadence there. They actually, I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but for some reason their dining space was closed the day that we went, and so we just kind of hunkered down and like you know, I don't know, like some like their pickup window space, and it was fine. Like it was great. The bread pudding that that man made, which I'm forgetting his name at the moment, but like it was, it had like this like dusting of like salt, and it was just so it was perfect. It was, you know, I mean, it was just it was perfect, and I think that yeah, that was a favorite. That was a favorite of mine as well. You know, I'm trying to think right now of where else
Have you hit up
I love
Mofo?
also. I have not been to Mofo. I like Benishing, but what's Mofo?
Venison, that's my spot. Venison was my lifesaver because there were so few restaurants, West African restaurants in New Orleans.
Yeah,
I mean, look, yeah, I love venison.
yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah.
even compare it.
It's yeah, yeah. I mean, I go there every time, um, and yeah, it's like it's just on the circuit. You know what I mean? For me, like I love that. Um,
You ever mess with? Have you been to Pesh?
did I go to Pesh? I don't think I've been to Pesh.
Pesh is good.
I don't think I've been to. I'm trying to. I'm like blanking. It's all gonna come to me as soon as we hang up. Like I. Oh man, where did I go that was like really? Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you could just like fall over into a place and have a great time.
You literally
Yeah,
stumble into some spot and you probably gonna find at least a couple things that are gonna be banging there. I mean, look, my
yeah,
favorite restaurant in New Orleans, Cleo's, Middle Eastern restaurant, corner
yeah.
store,
Oh
literally in a
man.
corner store, and it's some of the best Middle Eastern food I've ever had. Like,
Oh my God, I believe it. I believe it. I know we drove out to maybe like was it Gretna? We went to some Vietnamese, and I love Galatoire's. I mean, I know it's a complicated history, you know, it's difficult, but it's like I also like just enjoyed how they treat me there. Especially, you know, Galatoire's is one of these, you know, very old restaurants for a long time. It was just all black staff, no black diners. And I got to tell
mm,
you, there's something about being a black diner in a restaurant like that and having a black wait staff be very happy to serve you. And, you
hmm
know, they're not just bringing you like the shade crab soup. You know what I mean? Like it's
hmm
something else going on there. And, yeah, so it's complicated. You know, New Orleans is a tough city, and there's a lot that's wrong, and there's a lot that's disastrous and disappointing about how people have been left to manage and been disenfranchised and been defunded. You know, I feel like there's a new low for like the condition of roads that you see in New Orleans. Like you don't see that in other
Oh,
places.
yeah, infrastructure's always been falling apart in New Orleans. I feel like,
It's shameful. It's
yeah.
shameful. But if you understand our history in this country, you understand that that comes from a particular place and a particular set of values that's not going to get addressed until we deal with all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, but man, New Orleans is such. Uh,
Look, we got to have a follow-up conversation where we talk more about your fantastic projects that you're part of, because I do want people to go out and buy the books that you're writing and support all this brilliant work. Well, we have to log off soon, but let's just talk about one particular project that you have coming up that I'm super excited about. Wait, I don't even know. Have you talked about publicly um, the
are you
Bronx
talking to me?
Project?
Um, they have mentioned it to friends. I don't think they've like talked about it
Oh,
publicly.
okay, okay.
But we can but you know that's coming and I'm glad for it. Yeah, I don't know what to say except like I'm I I've learned one of the things I learned in the Goddesses 2019 was that it's really important to work with people when you can who really like you and know what you do.
Mhm.
Because coming to, you know, for folks that may not be familiar, um, you know, sometimes it's very exciting to work in in collaborative environments and be asked to like, you know, be considered for certain things. But people who don't actually know your work or they're like representatives are the ones who are finding you or things like that, there's just always a gap, right?
Yeah.
And you're navigating that throughout the relationship. And if you overcome that, great. But then, like, what if you don't? I've had a
Mm.
couple of things like not pan out. Um, and I think, like, you know, one of the things I've learned is just like, you know, what is the thing? This goes back to what you're saying about relationships. Love the one you're with, Luther said.
Mm.
You know, like you really just want to be with people who, like, I want to work with this person, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I realized that now it's like, oh yeah, so someone now might call me and I've known them for 3 years, I've known them for 4 years. Never actually maybe really talked about doing something, but like we've known each other, we've seen each other, we've known each other
Mm-hmm.
work, we've vented, we've like angry texted, crazy shit
Hmm.
happening. And then the person says, I'm ready to do this thing. Would you like to do it with me? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
like, and it feels so natural as
Hmm.
opposed to trying to orchestrate something. And I really think that also has to do with, you know, particularly like Black creators and, you know, some people of color to a degree. Like, we always have to navigate differently because it's always been different for us. I tried
Yeah.
to explain this recently on a project full of people who like did not understand what I was saying. But I was using the example of the Obamas, and their choices for their presidential and first lady portraits, right? They chose
Mm-hmm.
what you might consider to be non-traditional aesthetic choices, and this was
Hmm.
talked about ad nauseum in many many spaces.
Hmm.
But I'm like, I was trying to use that as an example to say they had to do that, right?
Hmm.
They had to do that. It could never have been just your typical sort of like Renaissance
Yeah,
inspired
right. Yeah.
painting because it it was already exceptional from the beginning, and so you had to continue that conversation. And that's a tough leap for a lot of people,
Hmm.
but if you look, you see that everywhere. You see that in our style, you see that in our language, you see
Hmm.
that in our food, and it's oftentimes people are trying to quash it, contain it, repackage it, change it. It's
Yep.
like, no, I put that verb in front because I wanted it in front because that's how we talk. Like that's, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you're doing it,
Yeah.
and so, you know, um, I mean, I think, like, yeah, I guess this is a long way of just saying, like, I'm excited about the things that are coming
Yeah.
because I think these are demonstrations of ways that we have not been, to your point, in your recent, like, retirement from cookbooks. Like, I'm trying to be like Brian, man. I'm like, I'm done. I did what I need to do. I came here. I conquered. Goodbye. Like, like I want people to have the opportunity to see themselves on paper in ways that they choose.
Yeah.
And I know that I am a strong partner in that process for the right folks. And
Right.
definitely like some folks in BX have heard that. So I feel
Yeah.
very
No
thankful
doubt.
for that. Yeah.
I mean, and let's be real. Like, the reality is that we so often have had to navigate the paucity of projects that are available to us. And so we're in a
Yeah.
position where it's like we may not have that perfect fit, but we got to get our bread. And I just hope that the innumerable opportunities that have been afforded to many of us, Black food creators, Black creators in general, over the third, fourth quarter of 2020, that this is sustainable. It isn't like a flash in the pan that we continue to,
Yeah.
and it is. I mean, we'll see, but there's a lot of sustainable shit happening that, damn it, I want to talk about. We can't talk about a lot of things, but see, you got some
Well,
stuff that
but
you can't
we have
talk
a
about
couple
now.
more minutes, but you have like, I mean, you have Black food coming up, which I finally like sent you some things.
Thank
Um,
you.
I know I'm not the onlyest. I'm not the onlyest one who was late,
Look,
but like
let
I
me
know I
tell
was
you.
late.
I mean, writing, like curating and editing a book during a pandemic is just a case study in how you just gotta like give people space and room. I mean, people are like, there are over 100 contributors. Obviously, people have folks dying. People are getting
Yeah.
COVID. People are sick. People are like housing insecure. Like, I'm like, okay, dude, yeah, whomever. Like, send it in next month. It's all good. Like, so trust me,
Yeah.
no judgment, no anything. I'm glad that you got it in, and I understand
And then
why it took so long.
we both been working with George McCalmont, who
The
everyone
guy, the
should follow
man.
at McCalmont Co. Yeah, I
Yes,
mean, truly,
yes.
truly.
I did want to ask you this though. It was something I'm interested just in terms of before we get off. There are two other things. So I want to ask you this question, and then I typically do a lightning round at the end of interviews where I say a phrase or a word, and then you just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
But thinking about your upbringing, your mother is from the South, grew up in LA.
LA. She's
Yeah.
from LA.
Oh,
Yeah.
from LA with
Yeah.
roots in the South.
Correct.
Your father is from Nigeria.
Correct.
What ethnic group? Well, where is he from in Nigeria?
Edo. So Edo people are Benin people. Yeah.
Okay.
Benin.
And I'm just wondering, thinking about the influence of, so what was cooking like at the crib? Like, was your mom cooking the foods that she might have encountered from visiting the South, connecting with relatives, was it a, for our generation at least, that kind of gendered breakdown at home in terms of like who did most of the cooking? Was your mom doing the cooking? Did your dad cook? When he did, if he did, what kind of things were you eating? And I'm just wondering how that kind of early phase of your life and
Hmm.
experiencing food has influenced the lens through which you look at food now.
Totally. So looking back, I realized it was a full spectrum. My dad cooked sometimes. I actually don't know what the division of labor was. My parents divorced when I was 13, and my father died about 4 years ago. I would be interested to have this conversation with my mom. But he did cook, and when he cooked Nigerian, or what I would describe as Nigerian dishes.
Mm-hmm.
But there were also a lot of events that we had in our home where there was food cooked by other households, and I believe it was the women in those households doing that work, because those were the people
Mm-hmm.
walking in the house with the big foil tins of the jollof
Mm-hmm.
rice and the plantain and the egusi stew.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad would make, pounded yam, and he would make, which was not necessarily like pounding, the yam, but like, working with the flour, and many different stews, and how and I don't know, like as a kid, like what was adapted versus what he might have been
Mm-hmm.
actually like recalling. But as someone who had been in the States since he was in his early 20s, I think he had learned, you know, at some point he needed to like have some of these references, just for his own comfort, right? And My mom cooked a lot, and she cooked. I mean, I felt like we had a very wide swath of that sort of 90s California, like there's tofu, there's like mixed vegetables, like
Maybe some Asian
it,
influences up in
a
there.
ton of Asian influence, like a ton. I mean, in most of my, you can look at my lazy Susan next to my stove right now. It's got like black Chinese vinegar. It's
Wait,
got fish sauce. It's got like, I mean, and my mom wasn't maybe cooking with with those ingredients, but um, we had soy, we had tofu all the time. We also were like a non-dairy household,
mm,
so there was a lot of like sort of the vegetable substitute, like the vegetable protein substitutes, um, and but the times when my mom would make something that was Southern, it was usually an event. So it was like,
mm.
mom's making gumbo, right? Or like, mom's going to try chitlins. And it was like, qu'est-ce que c'est? Like, I don't know what that is. And The times that we had the more like, rich kind of, sort of the celebratory soul food dishes, they weren't like recurring appearances. They were around holidays.
Mm,
Um, and so it really wasn't until I moved to Atlanta as an adult
mm,
after college that I started to correlate the connection between the
mm,
things that my mom had been cooking or referencing, or even like hearing stories about monkey bread. Like there was a
mm,
relative, there was like my maternal grandfather's aunt cared for my mom and my aunt Patrice when they were growing up.
mhm,
Um, and because my grandmother was traveling a lot for her work, of course my grandfather was working. And so, but she was cooking a lot of stuff from like the Southern larder, and like
mm,
everyone would talk about like all these recipes that like if you were in the workforce and you were kind of in that like Western like post World War II like kind of professional push, you didn't have necessarily the time
yeah.
to learn and adapt and understand those recipes. And of course, those weren't written down really. So the ones that we have,
Hmm.
I did a piece talking about my great grandmother's coconut pineapple cake a couple of years
Mm,
ago, and it's like amazing to have it written down because
yeah.
someone had to ask Grandma Violet, my grandmother's mother, like, okay, what did you do and how did you do that? And it's still, you look at the steps, you're like, something is missing here, you know. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Before this thing cuts off, lightning round. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready. I'm
All
ready.
right. Barbecue toast. I'm sorry, barbecue shrimp toast.
The first word that comes to mind, is that the thing that you want? God, like I don't know. I just like drowning.
Um, plantains.
Dodo.
Ghetto gastro.
Beloveds. I love them.
Oxford, Mississippi.
Challenging.
Edna Lewis.
Stalwart queen.
Osayi, thank you so much for taking some time. I know you got a lot going on, and I really appreciate
Thank
you
you. Oh my
having this
God.
conversation.
This was so great. I know we don't even get this chance to connect very much, but I'm like, I miss you or something. I don't know. It could also be because look at my cocktail now. It's like empty. No, I'm not attributing that to Jim, but I will say that like it's always such a joy to hear you, listen to you, read you. I'm so thankful that you are here and that we had the chance to do this. And thank you to everyone for hanging out with us on a lot of things completely
Yes,
like
yes.
not related to maybe our bios, but totally indicative of who we are as humans. And, you know, I don't know. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Big up to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to Kaiser for supporting. Thank you to MoAD staff, Monetta White, our fearless ED. And I do look forward to having a follow-up conversation. And I feel like I'm probably going to see you like 3 or 4 times this year, assuming that we actually can travel and have a normal life again.
Anytime.
So,
Anytime. Whatever you're doing, I'm down. Seriously. Like anytime. Yeah. Thank you.
all right. Talk to you soon. Peace,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.
RIP Doom.
RIP MF Doom. Wow, that's the masterful thing right there. Yeah. That
All right.
I'm gonna pour some on the floor for that brother
Pour
right
some
now.
out for Doom, no doubt. I'm gonna smoke one of these CBD cigarettes for Doom.
I'm gonna smoke a not CBD one.
Look, do your thing. Good to see you.
Love you. Bye.